And we are live.
And welcome into Gator Bytes on the 1010XL.com podcast network, also being simulcast on the Florida Gator 1010XL Facebook page. Today's Gator podcast is brought to you by Southeast Orthopedic Specialists. They're Northeast Florida's leading orthopedic center, providing an unparalleled level of care across numerous locations in both Jacksonville and St. Augustine. You can go to se-ortho.com, and we certainly appreciate the continued support from Southeast Orthopedic Specialists right here on the Gator Bites podcast. He is Graham Marsh. I'm the hacker Ryan Green. You, presumably, are Florida Gator fans getting ready for the Final Four tomorrow night, Florida and Auburn in San Antonio. Graham, it'll actually be 11 years to the day since the last Final Four game for Florida, which was April 5th, 2014. 4,018 days in between Final Four appearances. Yet here we are after that amazing comeback against Texas Tech, the Gators, and Auburn tomorrow night in San Antonio. I would imagine, Marsh, that you're pretty fired up.
Yes. uh, Hack, I have not had this much fun watching a Florida Gator sports team. I think you have to go back before 2010. You have to give me in the 06, the 07, the 08 range between football and basketball to get back to a team, football or basketball, that I have enjoyed watching as much as this one, because the 2014 team that did go to the Final Four, the Pat Young team, Will You Get, Casey Prather, Scotty Wilbekin, all those boys, Michael Frazier, loved watching them play. They were so awesome. They deserved to win a national championship. I love that team. Aesthetically, this current team is more fun to watch. So when you put that into play, and then you factor the fact that they have indeed at least reached the Final Four to this point, I haven't had this much fun watching a Gator sports team in 15 years. I'm sad that, by latest Monday they'll be done playing. I just want to keep watching them play for another month. They're so awesome to watch.
Yeah, I actually had Will You Get on my show earlier this week on Hacker After Dark.
Mm-hmm.
He's still playing pro ball over in Europe, and I got him right after practice. I'm going to replay it tonight on Hacker After Dark for those that missed it, and he just raves about this team. He's a Thomas Houck, he loves Thomas Houck. Will You Get didn't have the offensive game that Thomas Houck does, but I see kind of the intangibles that You Get gave Florida in what Thomas Houck has given Florida, the defense, the rebounding, that sort of stuff. I agree. They've been an amazing team to watch. And what's interesting is you really think back to how long this season has been. Remember, the season started here in Jacksonville. That's where we're based, in Jacksonville, with that game against USF. That
I was at
feels
that
like
game.
forever ago.
It
And,
does. I was at
and
that
yet,
game.
yeah, here we are, one night away. Look, let's recap Texas Tech. I thought it was over. And look, I think that in retrospect, people can say, oh, yeah, I knew Florida was going to come back. I find that very hard to believe that many people thought Florida was going to come back. You're down 9 with 2:50 to go. You hadn't stopped Texas Tech basically the entire second half. The three ball wasn't really falling for you. I think people might make themselves feel better or try to look smart and say, oh, yeah, I knew Florida was going to come back. I would be highly skeptical of that. I thought it was over. I think a lot of people thought it was over. And the fact that Florida was able to come back and win that game, one of the greatest comebacks in Gator sports history, not just basketball, but any sport. I mean, Texas Tech, based on the analytics, with 3 minutes to go, had over a 95% chance of winning that basketball game. And for Florida to come back and win it was absolutely incredible.
Yes, it was. When you talk about people saying they knew Florida was going to win, are you referring to yourself, Hack, once again tweeting prematurely?
No, but see, again, you and I will never agree with this. It's real
We
time.
will never agree on this because
No,
you're wrong, Hack.
it's real time reaction. I mean, that's what social media is. I'm not going to wait until after the game to give my thoughts. I'm going to give my thoughts right then and there. And right then and there, with 3 minutes to go in a 9 point deficit, you don't normally come back from that. I would say that if you look up the analytics in college basketball, 95% of the time this year, when a team's down 9 or more with 3 minutes to go, they don't win. So, yeah, I have no problem saying I thought it was over. I think a lot of people thought it was over. Maybe they
But
didn't
when
tweet it.
you tweet that hack and then 5 minutes later it proves to be incorrect, you're still wrong.
Well, that's fine. No, I know. I was wrong, but I have no problem admitting I was wrong.
So nobody is wrong for then calling your tweet out for being wrong.
Right, but again, you and I'll just never agree on that. Again, that the basis of social media is to react in real time, and that's what to me it's for. And if you don't tweet out in real time, then that's anyway. You and I will go to the grave not agreeing on that. But regardless, Florida did come back to win the game, and it was a great comeback.
Look, Florida, I think two things can be true at once. Hack. I think Florida did get some humongous breaks from Texas Tech, and they got three. They got three of them. They got the 2 free throws missed on the front end of the 1-on-1, and just free possessions, free stops, basically, for Florida with no time coming off the clock. And Florida was going to get an 8-second violation.
10-second, but yeah.
10-second violation. Sorry, yes, you're right. Florida was going to get a 10-second violation. And Williams fouled Elijah Martin because Elijah Martin was not going to get in that second. He was not going to get over the half-court line.
Yeah, I felt bad for Williams, actually, because the bench for Texas Tech was telling him to foul. And then at the very last minute, they're like, no, don't foul. It was too late. You already told the kid to foul. Yeah, so I kind of had some sympathy for him on that one.
But, yeah, I do too. But and that guy's a hell of a player. Oh, my God. The talk about Texas Tech has always been Toppin. Dude, Williams was the guy they couldn't stop.
Right.
They had no answer for that guy all night.
I thought Texas Tech had a great game plan.
Great, yeah, they did. But anyways, in watching that game, I've rewatched that game and rewatched the ending multiple times. Like I was just saying, I think two things are true. Florida did get lucky. Florida objectively got some breaks that needed to go their way, and probably if 2 out of those 3 breaks don't go their way, you and I are probably not talking about a Final Four weekend right now. That said, getting back to my point about how much I love watching this team play, when you watch the replay in those last 4 to 5, or really those last 2.5, 3 minutes, you really get the sense, Hack, that once Thomas Houck made that first 3, they weren't going to miss again. It really, truly felt that way. Like it truly felt like, okay, so they went back to back possessions. They went 4 possessions in a row, making threes to close the gap and then take the lead, right? It honestly felt like between Thomas Houck and Walter Clayton Jr., they could have shot 10 threes and they would have made them all. And they obviously wouldn't have made 10 in a row, but like you get what I'm saying. Like it really felt like they hit that first 3. That door was a little open. Florida felt a little life. It was like, all right, we're coming. We're not losing this basketball game now. That's honestly how it felt.
Yeah, no, look, it was an amazing finish and a great win, and one we'll be talking about for a long, long time. Here's my concern, however, and I've said this all week. Florida, with what they did in Nashville at the SEC tournament, they can win the national championship if they play like that. But they better find that tomorrow night, because if they play like they did against UConn and they play like they did against Texas Tech, Auburn will beat them by double digits. They're playing with fire. They've been trailing at the media timeout with 4 minutes to go against UConn. They're down 9 with 3 minutes to go against Texas Tech. You're not going to come back from something like that against Auburn, a highly motivated Auburn team, because you already beat them once this year. So, to me, tomorrow night's a lot more about Florida than it is about Auburn, in a sense that if Florida plays like they did in Nashville, they will beat Auburn. If Florida plays like they did against Texas Tech, they will lose to Auburn, and I think they'll lose pretty handily to Auburn. So, um,
I think if Florida plays like they did against Auburn, they'll beat Auburn.
yeah, well, in the regular season, sure. I mean, they played great. But my point is, I mean, everybody talks about they haven't played their best, and they haven't. And are they lucky to be here? Yeah, probably. But it doesn't matter. They're here. They're in the Final Four. But at some point, you're not going to make 4 threes in a row. At some point, Walter Clayton's not going to come down and hit 2 dagger threes like he did against UConn. You cannot have a 35 minutes, the first 35 minutes of the game look like that against Auburn, and certainly can't have that against Duke or Houston, because you're not going to come back in those situations. These teams are too good. They're better than UConn, and they're better than Texas Tech.
I agree, and you're going to agree with me on this, Hack. I personally, I don't know if you'll agree with me on this point, but the next one I'm about to make. My feeling with the Final Four and all 4 of these teams, I feel like Florida has the highest ceiling and also maybe the lowest floor. I feel like they have the ability, to your point, if they play like they did in Nashville, they're winning a national championship in a couple of days. I firmly believe that. However, they have shown the most chinks in the armor, I think, of any of those teams in the NCAA tournament. So that's the ceiling floor thing I'm kind of talking about. To get to that floor and play really poorly, Hack, they've had one bugaboo all year. And you know what I'm about to say.
Well, it's turnovers.
It is turnovers. And a lot of them, Hack, look.
It's just being sloppy with the ball. It's like not caring, not having concentration. Yes. It's very frustrating.
And look, if I'm watching the game and you have a turnover because Clayton beats somebody on a dribble drive or something, he draws some help from a rim protector, he throws up a lob, and a defender makes a great play and tips it away and it bounces off Thomas Houck's leg, or so. If it's something like that, I'll live with it. What I can't live with is Walter Clayton is kind of half paying attention and makes a chest pass to Will Richard on the perimeter, but it's at the same time that Will Richard cuts to the basket, so they just throw it out of bounds because they're just not on the same page. That I can't live with. I can't accept that.
It's a no-look behind the back pass and nobody's there. It's like, What are you guys doing, man?
These possessions are too important. This game, if I had to guess, is going to be too close. And look, here's the thing too, and for Florida, it really sucks that this is their bugaboo, because obviously turnovers hurt every basketball team, right? They hurt Florida worse because one of Florida's greatest strengths is offensive rebounding. Mm-hmm. So if you just turn the ball over, you don't give yourself an opportunity to flex one of your biggest muscles in a game. And you don't allow Thomas Houck and Micah Hand-Lockton and Condon and Chinyelu to get down low and do what they do and be physical and wear people down. In that Auburn game, that was a big reason they won. Do you remember? You remember at the end of that game when Florida was teetering on kind of closing the door, but they hadn't quite closed the door yet? I want to say it was Clayton or somebody threw up a shot, misses, and Thomas Houck went and got that tip rebound to Denzel Aberdeen.
It might be that play right there might be the play of the year, certainly in the conversation for Florida.
Correct.
That ended the game, yes.
And that play was 2024-2025 Florida Gator basketball in a nutshell. Because something about this team, for how talented they are, they bust their ass playing. Like they really get after it. And that includes the offensive boards. And you have so much size and athleticism, it feels like every loose ball on that end is theirs, which is awesome. And that is a recipe to winning basketball. But when you turn the ball over, you bail the defense out. You bail them out from your first shot potentially going in, and you bail them out from having to fight like hell to get that rebound over you. And that's not just getting the rebound. That's not just getting the rebound in that one possession. That is one of those things. This happened to Maryland. That's one of those things where when it happens over and over and over and over again, getting offensive rebounds over your opponent, that wears them down, man. All of a sudden on defense, their effort's not the same. All of a sudden, you can beat them a little bit easier off the dribble drive. All of a sudden, they may be asleep at the wheel, and you can get a couple of lobs over them. All of a sudden, they're going to be in more foul trouble. There's all these things that typically, if Florida's smart about it, plays to their advantage in the last 5 to 10 minutes of a basketball game, that when they turn the ball over a lot, they bail the other team out of it. It drives me crazy. It drives me insane.
Today's Gator Bytes podcast is brought to you by Southeast Orthopedic Specialists. For the highest quality care, you can rely on Southeast Orthopedic Specialists for any orthopedic injury or concern. You can log on to their website, se-ortho.com, and you can listen to the good doctor, Kevin Murphy, Thursday mornings on the 7 o'clock hour with Jeff and Dan right here on 1010XL for his weekly analysis of injuries in the world of sports. Let me give you a couple of things to look at tomorrow night. Florida is 25-0 this year when leading at halftime. Think about that for a second. 25-0 when they have the lead at halftime. And maybe even a bigger thing to look at tomorrow, and I didn't know this. I had Max Barr on of the Southeastern 16 podcast who told me this. I think it's a great stat. You know what? I don't know if you saw me tweet this out. Do you know what Florida's record is this year when Denzel Aberdeen hits a three-pointer?
23-0.
24-0.
24-0. Sorry. After
20,
yeah, 24. Yeah.
24-0 when Denzel Aberdeen hits a three. That's not a coincidence. I mean, that's crazy that stat exists. So here's hoping Aberdeen gets a three, and here's hoping Florida leads at halftime tomorrow. Because if that's the case, it's obviously worked out pretty well for the Gators. And my thought on this, Graham, is all right, I have Auburn buddies that have been, texting me all week. Revenge, right? It's the revenge game. Okay, well, yeah. I mean, Florida beat you in February in your home gym. I get it. Man, do you remember after that game, and again, I don't know how much motivation you need in a Final Four, but if there's any for Florida, Florida goes into Auburn and wins, right? And it's as if people that cover the SEC just threw that game to the wayside. Auburn was still above Florida in the power rankings in the SEC. Auburn was still above Florida in the rankings, AP and coaches poll after that game.
Basically nothing.
It changed nothing. Florida going in there and winning. Auburn was still the number one national seed, even though they've now lost more games than Florida. I don't know. If you're looking for anything as a motivating factor, yeah, Auburn might have the revenge factor, but if I'm Florida, we beat you on your home court. It's as if no one cared. So now let's go do it again, and I bet they'll care a lot more this time.
I tend to agree. You know why that is, Hack. It's because no disrespect, but it's because the Jay Billises of the world and those types of people that cover the sport on a national level, they made their decisions on who the best teams in America were before conference play started. And they gave Auburn all kinds of credit because Auburn played Houston in the non-con. Auburn played, and I know they lost to Duke, but they played Duke in the non-con at Cameron Indoor. And look, props to them. They played a tough non-conference schedule. They did have at that point the best resume. I don't believe at the end of the season Auburn had the best resume and deserved the number one overall seed. I don't believe that. And I'm not saying Florida needed it, but I think it was for some reason it felt like it was Auburn and then everybody else talked about it. And I did not agree with that at the time. I thought Houston had a debate. I thought Duke had a debate. I thought Florida had a debate. Whatever. But I agree with you. That is reasoning for motivating factors for the Gators. I think Florida has the type of coach that loves that stuff. I think Florida has a type of coach that says, look, this national media, they don't care about you. Mm-hmm. They want them in there.
We beat these guys on their home floor, and no one cared. They still had them better than you the entire season.
I will say, all that said, Hack, and I'm curious to get your thoughts on this. I'm glad Florida and Auburn play in the semis because if Florida were to lose, Auburn would be the team I'd want to win it all. over Duke. And I like Houston. Houston's fine. I'm kind of neutral on Houston, but I like Bruce Pearl. I think he's great. And look, Bruce Pearl gave Florida's coach his start.
Yeah.
And I think it's cool. They have a relationship. I think Bruce Pearl he's entertaining. He's fun to watch. I love when they cut to him during a game and he's about to explode. And then Duke, I mean, that logo is the Antichrist. So,
Well, let me ask you this: Florida beat Auburn in February. No Micah Hanlockton, no Elijah Martin. Now, what Auburn people will tell you is that Sam Alexis played well in that game, and Klobsar hit like 2 threes or 3 threes in that game. And those guys are not in the rotation. Both guys probably won't play tomorrow. But Hanlockton and Elijah Martin obviously will play. I don't believe Auburn played very well in that game back in February. Was that Florida? Was that a bad day for Auburn? Maybe a combination of the two. My point is, I think we're going to get a much better shot from Auburn. I think Auburn's going to play better than they did in February. The question is, can Florida raise their game, and what does the additions of Elijah Martin and Micah Hanlockton, who did not play in that game in February, mean for tomorrow night?
Yeah. Elijah Martin particularly is huge. They've needed heck. I don't know. It hasn't shown up in the way like Walter Clayton has with making these insane threes at the end of games and stuff like that. So I think it's gone a little under the radar. But those of us that watch every dribble, like you and I do, like a lot of people listening do, I think will understand and appreciate this. Some of the unsung, untalked about plays that Elijah Martin has made throughout the tournament, throughout the whole season. And you can tell it's the type of plays that a veteran, someone who's been there, someone who's done that makes are critically important. And you know, go back 1 week to the Texas Tech game. And I have brought this up every time I've been able to, so I'm going to bring it up on this show. Everyone's always going to talk about the flurry of comebacks, the threes, all that. A play that's going to get forgotten about in that game, Hack, was that loose ball on Texas Tech's end when I think it was their point guard was about to snag it or on top of the three-point line. And Elijah Martin basically volleyball hit it up over his head. You remember that?
Yeah.
Got around him, gets it, big dunk. Heck, I'm so serious. If Elijah Martin doesn't get that loose ball, that was honestly not even a 50-50. That was like a 70-30 for the Texas Tech guy. If he doesn't get that and get a big slam to help that lead stay contained and help Florida get some momentum back, again, we may not be talking about a Final Four run right now.
Well, not only that, that's a highlight reel play, but I'll give you one for Elijah Martin, too. And it's the simplest form of basketball. 78-77, Elijah Martin goes to the free throw line for a 1-and-1. And we just saw Texas Tech botch 2 consecutive 1-and-1s. Elijah Martin goes up there and drills both of them to make it 80-77.
And to the point I was making earlier, Hack, about like watching the replay, you just felt like they were going to make all these threes. Even watching live, when Martin got to the line, you're like, he's making these.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't you feel that way?
Like, look, I did, and I think, you know, and we've talked about this all week, you know, the fact that he's played in a Final Four, the fact now in the era of the transfer portal, he's the first guy that's been to 2 Final Fours with 2 different teams. If things go bad tomorrow night at some point in the game, it's going to be nice to have Elijah Martin out there. Because keep in mind, do you remember how Elijah Martin got eliminated in the Final Four at FAU? He got his heart ripped out at the buzzer by San Diego State.
When Butler made that shot for San Diego State.
Yeah, literally at the buzzer. That's Elijah Martin's lasting memory of the Final Four.
When
that
you
guy
watch,
is going to give everything in his being tomorrow night to win that game based on the way his Final Four ended at FAU.
When you watch that replay of Butler hitting that shot, Elijah Martin's in the frame. You see it.
Yeah.
You see him in an FAU jersey. Yeah, Hack. Here's the other thing. More like from a more like macro perspective, kind of like what you were just talking about with Elijah. And then to me, it's Elijah and Thomas Howell. They're the two guys that not, and we talk about glue guys, we talk about, and I agree with all that. But even more so in the game, in the heat of battle, they're the two guys, Hack, and this has been the case all season, and it's been the case in the tournament, that when Florida's not playing well, they're turning the ball over, they're flat, some stupid fouls. When they're kind of, the funk I'm talking about. This team's really good, but they get in this funk sometimes. When they're in that funk, it's those two guys that get a steal on defense, go try to dunk on somebody, whether they're successful or not. They just go do it to do it. Drive straight to the hole, throw it up, pop a shoulder into somebody, get an and one, get hype type of thing. Those are the two guys that they do something to give this team some oomph, right? And I firmly believe to be a great basketball team, you have to have that because, look, especially with as good as Florida is, when you're a 1 seed, when every game up to this point in the tournament, Florida has been predicted to win by the experts, by Vegas, by everyone. Sometimes it's hard to keep that edge that has made Florida so good all year. Human nature makes that hard. Mm-hmm. You need dudes like that are like, you know what? We've been kind of soft last couple of minutes. This dude's standing under the rim. I'm about to go make him a victim. And I'm about to dunk on him. I'm going to get the crowd hype. I'm going to get my bench hype. I'm going to get my coach hype. Like we're going to do something. And it's been those two guys all year. You know as well as I do, you're going to agree with this, that if Thomas Houck doesn't have the game he does against Texas Tech, they don't win that game. And Martin kind of the same. I view him in the same sort of light.
Ruben Chinyelu and Micah Hanlock didn't need to kind of wear down Janai Broome tomorrow. Again, we don't know. I mean, he's healthy, I guess. He says he's going to play. He's got the sleeve on his arm. How healthy is he? Well, we'll see. Let's bang a little bit under the paint there and go up for some rebounds. And let's see how healthy that elbow is. But Chinyelu, I would not be upset at all if you used 10 fouls on Janai Broome to just wear him down. And that brings me, and then we got to go quick here. The two X factors to me are Will Richard and Alex Condon. We need a Will Richard game tomorrow night. We really haven't had a Will Richard game per se this tournament. We need a Will Richard game. And Alex Condon, I know that he's had ankle problems for the last couple of months. He's had he'll have 6 days off between the Elite Eight and the Final Four. We need Alex Condon to look like Alex Condon. Because, again, I think Florida's going to get Auburn's best shot tomorrow night. And Florida's got to come out guns a-blazing. And you need a Will Richard game. And you need Alex Condon to look like he did a month and a half ago.
You need Alex Condon's offense. Obviously, you need it to score, but you need his offense to be clicking to make Broome and Auburn's other bigs really, really have to work on the defensive end. I think that's been something that has been a huge separator for Florida all year. And in that UConn game, I think, and in that Texas Tech game, it was not there, and it really hurt Florida. When those guys, particularly Condon's your main guy that gives you offense from the bigs, back and down, turn around, jump hook, that kind of thing. And I'm not really counting Thomas Houck in the bigs. I think he's more of a 3. Normally all year when he's giving you something offensively and really making the other team's bigs work on the defensive end, possession after possession after possession, and those guys start to get tired and they wear down some, that's when you've seen 15 minutes to go in the game, 10 minutes to go in the game, those offensive rebounds that Florida gets really start to wear on people. You know what I mean? And that front court from the other team really starts to wear down. They're tired, probably a couple in foul trouble. And that's been the real recipe for Florida to wear people down and win by pretty big margins. When those guys aren't giving you a whole lot offensively and not making the other team's back front court work every single possession, you might have Darian Williams type of situation against Texas Tech where he's cooking and he's playing really well offensively and he's got energy for it. He's able to get to the shoulder he wants to get, and he's scoring a lot. You score a lot. I think Broom's going to struggle with his arm being injured. I think the rest of the front court from Auburn's going to struggle as well.
Today's Gator Bytes podcast brought to you by Southeast Orthopedic Specialists. Again, we thank Southeast Orthopedic Specialists for their continued support here of Gator Bytes. Check them out at se-ortho.com. They're Northeast Florida's leading orthopedic center. The great folks at Southeast Orthopedic Specialists. All right, Graham, as we wrap up, early this week, I was convinced Auburn was going to beat Florida. Convinced. As we sit here on Friday morning with the game tomorrow night, I now think Auburn is going to beat Florida. I've kind of talked myself into Florida having a pretty good shot. And look, and here's the reason why. I know you're shaking your head and whatnot. It's okay to pick against Florida. It does happen. You're going to win every game ever.
Not in the Final Four, Hack. Come on. It's been 11 years. Live a little.
Auburn's playing really well. What Auburn did to Michigan in the second half, and particularly what they did against Michigan State, was eye-opening. There's no doubt that Auburn looked like the better basketball team over Florida last weekend, with Auburn's body of work in the 16 and the 8 compared to what Florida did in the 16 and the 8. And take nothing away from Florida. Auburn's good. I mean, this is a good basketball team. But as I've been talking more about it, and goodness knows I've talked about it a lot. I've been on every day from 4 to 6 and 8 to 10. I'll hit 20 hours of talking about this game tonight after I do both shows on 1010XL. Thinking more about it, I'm kind of talking my way back into Florida a little bit. But as we sit here now on Friday morning, give me Auburn, but give me Auburn in a nail-biter.
My eyes are deceiving me because both teams wear orange and blue. It's hard to see when I picture it in my head. Who does Walter Clayton Jr. play for? Does he play for the Florida Gators or the Auburn Tigers? Who does he play for?
He plays for Florida.
All right, well, there it is.
So
Gators, 83-76.
83-76 is your final?
Here's what I know. I'll give you actual analysis for like 30 seconds. I know we got to run here. I believe in my heart of hearts it's going to be a really close game, 2-3 minutes to go. I don't believe – I think both teams are too good. I think the moment is too big. And I think Bruce Pearl and Todd Golden know each other too well for it to not be a neck-and-neck game with 2-3. I believe at the last media timeout, you're going to have no idea who's going to win. In those moments, give me number one from Lake Wales, Florida. When Stan Van Gundy was right against Texas Tech when he said nobody's hit more big shots than that guy. Give me him in those moments.
It's very Kemba Walker-esque, the UConn run that he made back in the day. Look, I agree with you. With what he did against UConn and what he did against Texas Tech, it's hard to argue that. But like I said, if Florida plays like they did in Nashville in the SEC tournament, if they can find that tomorrow night in San Antonio, they will win the game. And they might win the game easily. If they look like they did against Texas Tech, they're going to lose the game. And so we'll see. Regardless, I imagine, well, if Florida wins Saturday, I imagine you and I will reconvene for a special Monday edition of Gator Bytes before the national championship game.
That's right. Manifest.
All right.
So I'll see you
by the
Monday.
way, Duke or Houston, who do you like?
Who do I like to win? I think Duke's going to win that game. I'm going to root for Houston because, again, Duke is the Antichrist. I would rather root for my worst enemy than root for the Duke Blue Devils. However, I think Duke's probably going to win. What's up?
I think Houston might win that game. Here's the problem with Duke. And, again, I hope we're breaking this down on Monday. I hope it's Florida and Duke. You realize Duke doesn't play a guy that's shorter than 6'6"?
They're tall. And when you watch the game, you see it. Like, they look big. Yeah. They feel and they look. Now, if only there was a team that was 4 deep with bigs to throw out.
Wow. That's fair.
Oh, right. That's the Florida Gators.
That's fair. All right, tomorrow night, Florida Auburn. Regardless of what happens, I imagine you and Denmark will have a podcast to react.
That's right.
All
Damn
right,
straight.
so we'll talk about it. Graham's got Florida. I'm taking Auburn right now. Talk to me in a couple hours. I've been getting there with Florida. Graham, the most important thing is getting there, right? That's the end goal. You always want to get there. And I'm not there yet, but I'm getting there with the Gators. I'll take Auburn at least right now. He is Graham Marsh. I'm the hacker Ryan Green. Thank you for watching and listening to Gator Bytes, 1010XL.com and the Florida Gator 1010XL Facebook page.